2.2.3 2017 up to now, beliefs of Chinese people in Xi Jinping's new era. In October 2017, President Xi Jinping began his second term in office. The 13th National People's Congress voted to approve the amendment to the Constitution of the People's Republic of China in March 2018, eliminating the term limit for the president. Since 2016, Chinese scholars have begun discussing China's future totalitarianizing. According to Zhang Qianfan, the distinction between post-totalitarian and new totalitarian ideologies frequently only relates to the degree of power concentration, with both constantly maintaining, repairing and strengthening the existing totalitarian system as their shared goal. Teng Biao has been believing CCP is always building a high-tech totalitarianism. Zhang Jie holds that China entered Xi Jinping's new era of totalitarianism in October 2017 when the Communist Party of China held its 19th National Congress, writing Xi Jinping's thought into the party constitution and giving him absolute power. With the COVID-19 outbreak in 2019 and the cruel zero-COVID policy implemented by the CCP government, an increasing number of Western media outlets and academics have come to the conclusion that the Chinese regime is reverting to totalitarianism from authoritarianism. Melissa Chan believes that the current China is more in line with fascist standards. Pei Mingxin proposes China's return to the neo-Stalinist rule in recent years. Dim Digest acknowledged Pei Mingxin's assertion and reviewed additional pertinent research papers to demonstrate that China has occasionally transitioned from authoritarianism to totalitarianism. Additionally, the agency thinks that CCP has changed into XCP. According to Yuan Li, China has transitioned from an authoritarianism to a system that upholds a single ideology and leader. There is a natural connection between China's 2,000 years of absolutist imperial thought and totalitarian ideology. In an absolutist country, the power of the supreme ruler will be considered by the ruled citizens to be supreme, boundless, and unrestricted. An absolutist state will become a totalitarian state when an ideology that legitimizes the state's absolute power and a dominant political party that exercises and controls every facet of state authority. The rise to power of Xi Jinping signifies the resurgence of Marxism-Leninism and nationalism. After the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China in 2017, his Marxist ideological worldview continued to extend to the economic field and formally defined the party's ideological priorities, which officially declared that the unfettered state of Chinese people's thoughts during the reform and opening up period was over. The tone and substance of Xi's 2022 report to the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China are more ideological than those of his 2017 report. The work report used Marxism 26 times, twice as often as 2017's ideological report. She is the sole embodiment of the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China's report, which calls for a re-evaluation of Marxism-Leninism in terms of its values, ideological framework, and method of analysis. The Communist Party of China will always cite a Marxist materialist theory: the economic base determines the superstructure, and the superstructure has a reaction force on the economic base. This sentence was also written into school textbooks at various stages in mainland China as the theoretical basis for supporting reform and opening up policy. According to Louis Althusser, the social structure of Marxism comprised two distinct components: the economic base and the superstructure. The productive forces and relations of production constitute the economic base, while the superstructure encompasses law and state, and ideology, religion, morality, and politics, etc. Therefore, prior to the reform and opening up, the CCP's primary concern was that the legitimacy of the CCP regime's rule had been jeopardized by the destroyed economic foundation, which is the country's superstructure. So, China's economy needed to integrate into globalization in order to stimulate and drive domestic economic growth. At present, the domestic industrial chain has been basically established. The thinking and mentality of the Chinese people are approaching westernization, and the deobscuration of the centralized system and its political leaders is essentially complete in the minds of the majority of people, especially the young people. This indicates that many Chinese people's thought processes have experienced significant shifts in the ideological component of the superstructure. Over the past 40 years, they have learned how to compare and choose in the game of the market economy. And they also have the capability to observe, think over, and question CCP's centralized system of political power and its rulers, which make the centralized rulers restless. In 2018, the Communist Party of China proposed such concepts: politicization of the economy and economization of politics. The politicization of economy implies that economic development should serve politics, while economization of politics signifies that the party should establish the leading role of ideological and political work in economic development. The introduction of this political ideology implies that the market economy established after China's reform and opening up will be subjected to the control of totalitarian politics. Specifically, the resurgence of totalitarianism under Xi's leadership will be built upon the economic achievements in the past 40 years. The introduction of these two concepts also paves the way for the continuation of the totalitarian resurgence in political theory and ideology after Xi's re-election. The ideological core of the Chinese Communist Party is rooted in Marxism-Leninism. It can be observed that during Xi Jinping's tenure, Marxism-Leninism will exert a powerful counterforce on the difficultly established market economy. This signifies Xi's regime aiming to conduct a Marxist-Leninist-style totalitarian revolution on China's market economy. The Marxist-Leninism transformation of the market economy inevitably accompanies the disappearance and contraction of a large number of private enterprises. However, private enterprises have made significant contributions to China's economic development. As of January to July in 2019, private enterprises contributed 56.9% of tax revenue in China, with investment accounting for 85% in the manufacturing sector. By 2017, all private enterprises will account for nearly 80% of the total urban employment population, and the number of private enterprises will account for more than 95%. One inherent limitation of the state-owned economic system is its inability to effectively incentivize employee output, thereby reducing reinvestment in enterprises and the overall societal employment rate. So, how will the various social conflicts arising from this process be addressed as private enterprises gradually decrease in number? After 40 years of reform and opening up, the Chinese people have come to the full realization that achieving communism under the centralized system of the CCP is unattainable. The dream of a communist society has been shattered. However, the Chinese populace already realize that the communist goal is nothing more than an illusion imposed by the totalitarian ruling class, achieved through control over all public propaganda and ideological education. And their human self-interest nature will also prompt them to actively discard this ideology and pursue other, higher ideals or more practical interests. The Chinese totalitarian government will have to use state apparatus to brutally suppress the classes if they fight the CCP government for their own interests and beliefs. This type of violence is employed by the totalitarian ruling class as an exploiting class to maintain its power, not by the exploited class in opposition to the powerful. This type of violence guarantees that the market economy will continue to be destroyed by the superstructure's reaction force. This is the process of going back to socialist production relations from market economy production relations. This process of reconstruction of production relations must be guaranteed and supported by the violent apparatus under the control of the totalitarian government in order to ensure that it proceeds as much as possible in accordance with the wishes of the totalitarian monarch. This is what I refer to as a deliberate reconstruction based on violence. The abuse of political power by the totalitarian ruling class is the fundamental component of this type of violence, assuming that rulers of all sizes in this class think alike. Their increasingly violent methods of defending their totalitarian rule are also acts of indulgence, as is their avaricious behavior in their quest for power. Totalitarian regimes do not always resort to violence in order to maintain control over their citizens. The goal of brainwashing is more frequently to achieve the so-called long-term peace and stability that they frequently advocate by continuously altering people's cognitive and emotional processes. For instance, Chinese people are taught through national education and propaganda on nationalism that the enemy of the nation is never the ruling class, but rather always external forces, the so-called hostile Western forces. However, what will be the outcome and mechanism of this type of political disinformation, which in the end can only be regarded as a means of producing transient delusions? In the next video, I will introduce some main theories about belief change in the theory of constrained reflection belief model proposed by myself, as well as the application of this model in the 40 years of reform and opening up in China.